How does the best player in college football become an NFL afterthought just 3 years later? Troy Smith went from Heisman glory and lighting up Michigan to a 5th-round pick fighting just to stay in the league. But before the trophy, before the draft slide, his biggest battle was proving he even belonged at quarterback. And that fight started long before Ohio State. Troy Smith's story took shape in Glenville, a Cleveland neighborhood known for toughness and talent. His childhood was unsettled, at one point in foster care while his mother worked through personal struggles. Football became his anchor, the one place where structure replaced chaos. At Glenville High, though, Smith wasn't the star quarterback. Coaches lined him up at running back, sometimes even tight end. He was strong, fast, and versatile, but never the prototype. Too short, too raw, not polished enough. Recruiters saw an athlete, not a leader under center. By the end of junior year, the buzz still wasn't there. While other prospects stacked up offers, Smith had almost nothing. The dream of being a quarterback at a top program looked like it might end before it ever started. Then came Ted Ginn Sr. In Cleveland, Ginn was more than a coach. He was a builder of futures. He looked at Smith differently. He didn't just see the speed or toughness. He saw a quarterback. Ginn demanded he make the switch, and with that change, the game opened up. Suddenly, Smith's improvisation had a spotlight. He could still run through tackles, but now he was directing the offense. Broken plays became highlights, and teammates began to follow his lead. It wasn't overnight polish, but it was undeniable talent. The recognition finally came his senior year with an invite to the Elite 11 camp, a proving ground for the nation's top quarterbacks. He wasn't the most refined passer there, but he held his own and showed flashes of brilliance. For the first time, national coaches began to take notice. Even then, the recruiting trail was thin. Programs had already filled their quarterback slots, and Smith seemed destined to slip through the cracks again until timing intervened. Ohio State had one final scholarship left in their 2002 class. Smith jumped at it, the last ticket into Columbus, the last chance to prove he belonged on the biggest stage. A foster kid from Glenville, a running back turned quarterback, the final name on Ohio State's recruiting board. That gamble, backed by Ginn's belief, wasn't just a turning point. It was the decision that made everything else possible. What does it take to go from a roster afterthought to the centerpiece of college football's biggest stage? For Troy Smith, the rise at Ohio State came one step at a time. He redshirted in 2002 while the Buckeyes won the national title without him. In 2003, he saw only scraps of action, mostly as a returner or runner, barely touching the ball as a passer. For a player who had fought so hard to be a quarterback, it was a humbling start. Everything shifted in 2004. When starter Justin Zwick went down mid-season, Smith finally got his chance. The offense immediately came alive with his mobility and improvisation. His first signature moment came against Michigan. Facing a rival with championship hopes, Smith accounted for 386 total yards and 3 touchdowns in a 37-21 upset. That day, the athlete playing quarterback label was gone. He was a playmaker who could change games. By 2005, Smith had become the full-time starter. His dual-threat style gave the Buckeyes an identity. He threw for over 2,200 yards and 16 touchdowns, added 600 rushing yards and 11 more scores, and capped it with a Fiesta Bowl win over Notre Dame. Named Offensive MVP, Smith showed he could carry Ohio State on the national stage, not just in rivalry games. Then came 2006, the peak of his college career. With experience, his decision-making sharpened and his accuracy jumped. Week after week, Ohio State rolled. The season built toward the #1 versus #2 showdown against Michigan, and Smith delivered again. 316 yards, 4 touchdowns, and a 42-39 win in one of the rivalry's greatest games. Across his 3 starts against Michigan, he totaled over 1,100 yards and became the first Buckeye quarterback since the 1930s to win 3 straight in the game. For fans in Columbus, that feat alone made him a legend. Inside the locker room, his teammates agreed. After years of being overlooked, Smith was voted Ohio State's most valuable player for 2006. From redshirt freshman to unquestioned leader, his rise was complete. But the season wasn't just about wins or numbers. It was about transformation. The kid who once barely had a scholarship offer had grown and was now standing one step away from college football's greatest individual prize. By 2006, Troy Smith wasn't just Ohio State's quarterback. He was the face of college football. That fall, the Buckeyes went 12-0, and Smith was the engine behind it all. Every week, it felt like he had an answer, whether slipping away from pressure, firing darts downfield, or breaking a defense's will with his legs. What made his rise even more striking was how different he looked from the mold of the time. College football still worshipped tall, statuesque passers. Smith was 6 feet tall, improvisational, and unconventional, yet he commanded the biggest stage with a calm that silenced critics. And in December, the payoff came. The Heisman ceremony wasn't close. Smith received nearly 87% of first-place votes, one of the most dominant wins in the award's history. For his family, it was validation. For Ohio State fans, it was a coronation. And for Smith himself, it was proof that the kid overlooked as too small had climbed to the very top of the sport. The Heisman was a crown on his college career, but it also raised the question that would define everything to come. Could this kind of dominance carry over to the NFL? For Troy Smith, the NFL wasn't a clean transition. It started with a draft slide that shocked almost everyone. Just months after winning the Heisman in a landslide, Smith sat through round after round in the 2007 NFL Draft waiting for his name. Scouts nitpicked everything. Too short at 6 feet, not a pro-style passer, more athlete than quarterback. Teams that had watched him torch Michigan 3 years in a row suddenly decided he didn't fit the mold. By the time Baltimore finally called in the 5th round, 174th overall, the damage was done. The fall from Heisman podium to late-round pick was one of the steepest drops in memory. Even so, Baltimore gave him a shot. As a rookie, he saw the field late in the season and even flashed some of his old magic, throwing touchdowns, extending plays, making defenses scramble. There was hope that maybe he could climb the depth chart. Then came 2008, the year that should have been his chance. Instead, Smith was blindsided by Lemierre's syndrome, a rare and life-threatening illness that left him hospitalized and drained his offseason. While he was sidelined, the Ravens turned to a rookie named Joe Flacco. Flacco took the job, led the team to the playoffs, and never gave it back. Smith wasn't beaten on the field. He was beaten by circumstance. His window had closed before it really opened. By 2010, the Ravens had moved on. Smith found a fresh start in San Francisco, where the 49ers were desperate for stability, and for a brief moment, it looked like he had found it. In London against Denver, he ran for a touchdown in a comeback win. A week later, against St. Louis, he threw for 356 yards in an overtime victory that earned him Sports Illustrated's Offensive Player of the Week. For a flash, the Heisman winner was back, slinging the ball like it was 2006. But the highs never lasted. Inconsistency, new coaching changes, and the constant search for the next guy pushed him out again. By the following year, San Francisco moved on, and Smith's shot at being an NFL starter was gone. Still unwilling to walk away, he chased football through the United Football League and then the Canadian Football League, suiting up for the Omaha Nighthawks and Montreal Alouettes. The stage was smaller, the spotlight dimmer, but the drive to compete never left. In the end, his NFL stat line was brief. A handful of starts, flashes of promise, but nothing close to the Heisman dominance fans remembered. For a player who once redefined Ohio State's offense, the pro game proved a brutal reality check. The question that hung over his career never really left: was Troy Smith undone by size, timing, and illness? Or did the NFL simply never give him the chance he'd earned? When Troy Smith's playing days ended, the story didn't just stop, it shifted. He turned his focus toward giving back, using his platform to mentor young athletes. Through camps, community outreach, and speaking engagements, he preached the lessons his own career had carved into him: resilience, adaptability, and finding structure when life feels unstable. For kids who saw themselves in his story, Smith became proof that setbacks don't erase potential. He also leaned into advocacy. Smith supported youth fitness initiatives and spoke openly about mental health, pushing athletes to understand that leadership isn't just about game day performance, it's about how you handle pressure when the lights fade. But it wasn't all smooth. In 2017, Smith was cited for driving under the influence, a stumble that could have overshadowed his post-football work. Instead of hiding from it, he owned it, accepted accountability, and kept moving forward. The misstep didn't erase his message. If anything, it gave his mentorship more weight. He wasn't preaching perfection. He was living proof that persistence matters more than polish. In 2014, Ohio State honored his number 10 jersey inside the horseshoe. The tribute cemented his place in Buckeye history and reminded fans of the impact he left on the field. But Smith's true legacy stretches further. It's in the kids he coaches, the athletes he mentors, and the lessons drawn from both his rise and his fall. Troy Smith's story isn't neat. It's complicated, uneven, and human. But maybe that's what makes it resonate. His greatest victories came not just in touchdowns or trophies, but in refusing to let setbacks define him. From foster care in Cleveland to the Heisman podium in New York, from draft day heartbreak to flashes of hope in the NFL, Troy Smith's journey is a reminder that greatness doesn't always follow a straight line. His career was short, uneven, and full of what-ifs, but it also showed the resilience of a player who refused to quit. Whether proving himself at Glenville, carrying Ohio State to glory, or chasing opportunities in leagues most fans never watched, Smith's legacy isn't just his Heisman or his 3 wins over Michigan. It's the way he kept pushing when the game pushed back. And that raises a question. In today's NFL, where dual-threat quarterbacks like Lamar Jackson and Jalen Hurts are stars, would Troy Smith's story play out differently?